morning, friends, and welcome to Monday Musings with the Blended Mama, gentle encouragement for busy women finding calm in the chaos. I'm Teresa, and I'm really glad you're here with me this morning, whether you are listening while you're getting ready for the day, driving to work, folding laundry, or enjoying a quiet moment with a cup of tea. Mine is matcha this morning. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me today. Now, last week we kicked off our new season with the idea that growth doesn't require becoming someone else. We talked about awareness and how many of the habits that shape our lives are these habits just become so familiar that we stop noticing them, right? So this week I want to talk about one that I think women struggle with. Now listen, if you remember, we're going through How Women Rise in our book club. So this is where a lot of the concepts are coming from, okay? But we talked about the general idea last week. This week I want to talk about habit number 1 in the book. And let me just read that chapter name to you so you get it directly from the source. And that is reluctance to claim your achievements. Right? I think that many women struggle with it. I know that it is something I have struggled with for years. I still struggle with. And it's the idea that somehow acknowledging our accomplishments means that we are bragging, right? I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. Maybe you feel differently. But our anchor phrase today to kind of keep us grounded is that visibility is not bragging. And I think that's something many of us need to hear. And talking about our accomplishments really is bringing visibility, okay? So recently, I received a message from one of our book club members. She had watched a replay of our previous session, and she reached out to tell me how much she appreciated my facilitation style. Thank you, June. It was a thoughtful message, and I really appreciated her taking the time to send the message, right? Because that takes effort. Somebody has to intentionally do that. And I replied with a simple thank you, and then immediately followed that with, I never really know what people are expecting from me with book club. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I mean, it's definitely a true statement. I don't know what people are expecting. But looking back, I realized I had done something I've done many times before. Instead of just receiving the compliments, just saying thank you and letting that be enough, I immediately started explaining it or justifying it, qualifying it, downplaying it, right? And I think that I'm going to guess I'm not alone in this. Maybe you've done it too. I'm just guessing I'm not alone, but maybe I am. But, someone compliments something you've done, a project, a meal, a presentation, a handmade gift. And before they've even finished speaking, you're already preparing your response. Oh, that wasn't a big deal. It was nothing. I still have so much to learn. It could have been better. I definitely made mistakes. Anybody could have done that. And for me, I see this happen with my crochet projects, right? I've been crocheting for about a year and a half. And maybe somebody will compliment something I've done, something I've made. And my first instinct is to often tell them I'm still learning, because I do still feel like I'm learning a lot. But I'm also at the point where I decided last night that I was gonna make another project before conference next week. Why do I do these things to myself? It's maybe gonna be a tank top. I don't know. It's also wool. It's probably gonna be too hot, but we're gonna be in like an ice rink, so it's usually cold. So maybe it'll be fine. I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna try to finish it, but anyway. So I've had people compliment, and it's obviously true. I created something, right? But I that can still exist with the concept of that I'm still learning, right? And I can also still be proud of what I've accomplished. Like, this looks really pretty, even if I never wear it. And I told my husband, I was like, well, worst case, I just undo it, right? Because I can do that. So I don't know. Anyway, but the more I kind of think about it is the more I've realized that many of us, including myself, are uncomfortable allowing our contributions to be seen, right? Maybe it's because we worry that we're going to sound arrogant or appear boastful or seem less humble. But I really wonder if we are confusing visibility with bragging, because they are definitely not the same thing, right? Bragging is about elevating yourself above others and making yourself seem like you're better than other people. And visibility is just simply allowing your contributions to be seen, right? And that visibility creates opportunity. And I've really been thinking about this at work a lot, because we've got, anyway, just a lot of reasons, and none of them bad, but I've been thinking about it at work. And performance reviews are definitely not my favorite thing. Talking about myself has always felt uncomfortable. Even doing it here makes me feel uncomfortable. But I'm trying to push through that. And they recently started having us do, like, we've always done annual reviews, but now we're doing like these quarterly notes, and we're supposed to sit and chat with our boss. Now I chat with my boss every other week, like on a one-on-one. So, I mean, it's not like she doesn't know what I'm doing, but anyway, they're making us do like more formal ones quarterly. And for a long time, I've just kind of approached those types of conversations with the mindset of that if I worked hard enough, people would naturally notice. And sometimes they did. But over time, I really am coming to the realization that it's important for me to bring that visibility, because my boss can't know or recognize work that I'm doing if she didn't know I was doing it, right? So, like, she can't understand how much time certain activities require if I never talk about them, or how many random questions that people just send to me that I respond to that really probably somebody else should, but if I have the information, I do it. So anyway, but she's not going to know that I'm doing those things if I would never talk about them. She can't identify staffing gaps if she doesn't know what responsibilities are being carried by one person. She can't plan for future retirements or transitions without understanding where critical pieces of knowledge live, right? And sharing that information isn't bragging. It wasn't bragging, and it's not bragging now. It really is helping her to be able to make informed decisions. And so I think that is starting to change how I'm thinking about visibility as it relates to that type of process. It really is more creating understanding and making sure that people around us have an accurate picture of reality. And I think it shows up outside of work too. It can show up in motherhood, in volunteering, in small business and entrepreneurship, in your creative hobbies, and all those invisible things that women do every single day. And so much of what women contribute happens behind the scenes a lot of times, right? The planning, the organizing, the coordinating, the remembering, the emotional labor, all that preparation and follow through, the details that nobody notices unless they don't get done, right? And I'm not going to say that those are always female tasks, by the way. I mean, definitely men can absolutely do them. I'm just saying more generically. But anyway, but because those things happen behind the scenes and they happen quietly, we can start to believe that they don't count, but they do, right? And I also think that when we are minimizing our accomplishments, we're actually moving the goalpost, right? And I know I've done this, right? So launching this podcast is a perfect example. When I think about it, I am proud that I have started a podcast, even if it has like 10 people that listen to it. I had definitely never done this before. I was learning as I went. I'm still learning as I go. I'm sure there are tons of things that I can improve. And yeah, if somebody compliments a podcast, my brain still wants to respond with, well, it's not fancy, or I'm still figuring it out. It could be better. And maybe that's true. Definitely that's true. But it's also true that I started a podcast, right? I showed up, I recorded the episodes, I'm learning new skills. I kept going even whenever life got really hard and it became more of a challenge. I still kept going and kept showing up. And I think sometimes we can become so focused on what still needs improvement that we forget to acknowledge what we've already done. And when we do that, we're robbing ourselves of the opportunity to see our own growth. So, one of the things I hope that we're exploring throughout this season is the idea that growth doesn't require becoming someone else. And I think this habit directly connects to that. Because claiming an accomplishment doesn't mean you've arrived. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you have nothing left to learn. It simply means you're willing to acknowledge reality. You are willing to say, I did that thing. Not because you're better than anyone else, not because you are seeking attention, but because it's true. And I wonder how many of us are waiting for some future version of ourselves before we are willing to acknowledge our progress today. So, what if we stop doing that? What if we let our accomplishments count? What if we allowed ourselves to receive a compliment without immediately explaining it away? What if we simply said, thank you, and left it there? And I think that planning can kind of help us with this and learning to think differently about our accomplishments. So most planners are filled with tasks, appointments, deadlines, projects, things we need to do, right? In fact, mine definitely has those things in it. Okay. But very few of us create a space to record what we've already done. And that is why I love the idea of creating an I did that page. This was actually mentioned by one of our members in our planning call this past week, and I love the idea. Thank you, Carol, for the idea. And I did that page is simply a place to record wins, not just the big milestones, but the everyday ones too. Maybe you finished a project, had a difficult conversation, followed through on a commitment that you made, or maybe even asked for help, tried something new, recorded a podcast, finished a crochet project. I'm hoping that's on mine this week. Kept going when it would have been easier to quit. Those things all count. And when we write them down, we create evidence of our growth. So before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a few questions to consider. So grab your planner or your journal or your sticky note to write them down and spend some time thinking about them this week. But what accomplishments do you intend to dismiss? What accomplishments do you tend to dismiss? And what would you say to a friend who accomplished the same things that you have accomplished, right? Does that help you see where maybe you are minimizing your contributions? And what would change if you allowed your accomplishments to count? Because visibility is not bragging. Visibility is allowing your contributions to be seen, and visibility creates opportunities. Okay. So this week's gentle step before we go is to create an I did that list. It can be in your planner. Maybe it's a spot at the end of your weekly layout. It can be in a journal. It can be in a whole separate notebook by itself, but create an I did that list and write down 3 things that you have done recently. Not things you plan to do, not goals you're working towards, but 3 things you've already done, finished. And when you write them down, don't add a disclaimer, don't explain them away, don't follow them with a but, don't add all the other things that you need to go back to fix on it. Just let them be true that you did that thing. Thank you guys for spending a few minutes with me today. If you would like to continue the conversation, you will find links in the show notes, including information about all my favorite planning tools and how to find me on social media so we can continue the conversation there. Until next time, friend, remember, growth doesn't require becoming someone else. Sometimes it begins by seeing yourself clearly enough to acknowledge how far you've come. Now keep planning with purpose, coordinate that chaos, and I will see you right back here next Monday.